I want to say 30 minutes after you left, I heard 3 knocks at the front door. So I opened the door and there was nobody there. So I just shook it off, like, okay, whatever. And went back, watched TV. And then a few more minutes passed and I heard 3 more knocks. I opened the door and I was like, okay, nobody's here. I was like, man, is Emily messing with me? I don't know if you remember me that I text you. And I remember you texting me back saying that, no, Dad, I'm over here at my friend's house having dinner. And I was like, oh, this is crazy. So then it happened the third time, 3 knocks. So I go in the kitchen and I grab a knife. So I open the door. Of course, nobody's there. I walk out the front door, got my knife in my hand, and I'm just looking. I'll go to the left side of the house, go to the right, which is where the garage is and stuff. And I didn't see anything at all. So I went back in. And it happened one more time. And I actually walked out the front door with a knife again. And I was just calling it out saying, okay, you guys are messing with me. Who are you? Show yourself.
Come down here, please, because I'm alone.
Did you hear that?
Yeah.
I know y'all heard that.
I heard that.
I know I heard something down here. What was that?
Oh, did you hear that?
Dude, I just saw some eyes back there.
Yeah, we
Hear something? Yes. Hello, listeners. Welcome to the podcast with Misfit Apparitions. I'm Ernest, and today I'm going to be talking about a ghost story with my daughter, Emily. We're going to talk about a haunted location that we lived for about 1 year and 6 months in the Houston area. I believe the street is Spruce Run. I won't give the actual address, but it's kind of interesting. So I hope you enjoy this ghost story. So, hello, Emily. How you doing?
I'm doing great.
Good. So, do you remember anything that went on in that house?
I remember a few things briefly, but I do recall the feeling that I got being there more than anything.
I remember you mentioned something about at the time Bella was young. I believe she was 2 years old, and upstairs you had told me a story about a shadow you saw with Bella. Can you tell me about that?
I remember holding her, and she just seemed to follow something with her eyes. And so, holding her, we walked over together, and I entered your bedroom at the time, and over to the right, leading into the bathroom, I noticed in the corner there was some darkness. And I looked at her for validation. She looked at me, and then it was gone.
Wow. So you saw like maybe like a shadow figure, or was it like a silhouette of someone, or was it small?
It seemed very small, but definitely a shadow. You couldn't make out what it was. You just know that there wasn't anything casting that shadow.
Right.
But the fact that she saw it and I saw it, we just kind of didn't talk about it. But it was probably the first time I've ever actually seen something.
Yeah.
I'm used to feeling things.
Right. I remember one time you told me a story about at that time you were in high school, Klein High School, and you were on the bus, and of course you got dropped off at the house, and you had told me something about some friends of yours saw you getting off and walking towards the house, and you told me that something about the house being haunted. Can you tell me about that?
I remember them telling me that I lived in the spooky house, and that house is pretty much a revolving door. They don't ever have anyone there for too long. And then a lot of people that have lived there longer in that neighborhood, they know of things that people have done there, like rituals and whatnot. And I don't know if they were just trying to scare me, but that house definitely had its own reputation that I didn't know about right away, being newer
Right.
at that school. But as I made friends, they felt comfortable to tell me, and we had already been experiencing things at that time.
Right. I'll tell you one little story. It was one night that you went to go stay at a friend's house. And I remember you leaving with this friend. I guess her mom or dad came to pick you up from the house, and you had left. I don't know if you remember this, but you had left, and your mom had gone upstairs with Bella. So I was downstairs, and I was watching TV. And I want to say 30 minutes after you left, I heard 3 knocks at the front door. And I was like, it's kind of strange. So I opened the door, and there was nobody there. So I just shook it off. It's like, okay, whatever. And went back, watched TV. And then a few more minutes passed, and I heard 3 more knocks. I opened the door, and I was like, okay, nobody's here. And I was like, man, is Emily messing with me? And I don't know if you remember me that I text you. And I had said, hey, you messing with me? Are you coming back? Are you at the house? Because I think you were like down the street, and then their house was to the left, a couple of houses down. And I was like, are you guys like messing with me? Did you walk back? And I remember you texting me back saying that, no, Dad, I'm over here at my friend's house having dinner. And I was like, oh, this is crazy.
I remember that.
You remember that? So then it happened the third time, 3 knocks. So I go in the kitchen and I grab a knife, and I'm like, okay, this is BS. So I open the door. Of course, nobody's there. I walk out the front door, got my knife in my hand, and I'm just looking. I'll go to the left side of the house in the front yard. I see nothing. Go to the right, which is where the garage is and stuff, and I didn't see anything at all. And I was like, okay, this is crazy. So I went back in, and it happened one more time. And I actually walked out the front door with a knife again, and I was just calling it out, saying, okay, you guys are messing with me. Who are you? Show yourself. And then when I walked back in, I remember a ghost story that I was watching on TV, that if you hear 3 knocks at the front door, that's a spirit wanting to come in. And I was like, oh, did I just lit something in? So I was like,
that.
you heard that
I know
too?
what you're talking about.
So that was a weird night. And I was, like I said, I text you, and you was like, no, I'm not messing with you, Dad. So that was one of my experiences there. But there was one more thing that you had talked about. I know you said that you're not really sure or remember, but you had told me something about in your bedroom you would at night feel something around your bed.
I feel like it was more that sheet, not the fitted sheet,
Right.
but that I feel like maybe it got caught. But it happens so often that I don't feel like it just kept getting caught on anything. I don't tuck in my sheets. I don't do any of that. It's always just, free.
Right.
So, but I do recall a few times that I'd wake up and look immediately at my feet. And I think it was just a response of, something touched me or, whatnot. My room was always a weird energy being there.
Yeah, I know.
So, and then it didn't help that I had this like really big mirror just leaned up against the wall. So when you walked about halfway up the stairs, I almost had to look through that mirror to make sure there wasn't
Right.
anything odd or strange. But I'd say that's probably the worst of it that's ever happened in my room, other
Mhm.
than when you're in there and you just felt heaviness, you felt uncomfortable, like someone was in there, but no one's in there.
Right.
I had to keep the closet closed at all times. I
remember that.
I think that house is why I don't keep closets open. Every door
Right.
has to be shut.
I remember you saying that you mentioned about the closet. I remember going into your room and you would have the lights on and stuff, but it always seemed that there was something off in that room. And even when you weren't there, like during the day, it was dark in your room without the light on, because I think you were on the side of the house that had these large trees hovering over above the house, so it really kept like shade on that side. But I will tell you about when you mentioned about the mirror. This one incident that every night when I was in the living room, I had this mirror. Your mom had this mirror in the dining room where we had the dining room table, and I had my computer there. And right where the mirror stood, when you sat in the couch in the living room, you could see the mirror. And sometimes I would just see a flash of a dark shadow just walking by, like the mirror. And it happened several times. And one night, your mom and I were sitting on the couch watching TV, and she had told me something. I don't know how the conversation started, but it was kind of like we talked about that mirror. And I looked at her and I said, "Well, I see the same thing. I see these dark shadows that go through that mirror, like somebody walking by." So what I did is I would test it, like investigate to make sure that when cars drove by, that it didn't cast a shadow on that mirror, and it never did. So, to this day, I don't know what it was, but you know how they say mirrors are like portals. So it could be something just coming out of the mirror. I don't know, but that's what they say. So I think that was a little bit. Uh, I don't know how to say it, but like your mom and I never talked about it. When we talked about it at that time, it was kind of like, wow, that's validation. Like you never said anything, I never said anything, but then we came together. I was like, oh wow, that's pretty.
Oh, and it probably spooked her completely.
Yeah,
She never brought it up. That's not
probably.
something we didn't always like talk about it. And any time that I felt like I could tell you, you immediately were like, "You too?" And it's like, what?
Yeah.
It's almost like let's stop talking about this.
No, I know. I um, in that room, in the dining room, I had one more incident, and it was one night that your grandparents came to stay with us. Now I don't know if I shared this with you a while back, because it's been years since you were in high school when we lived in this house, and when your grandparents were there, it was just a weekend. I'm always the last one standing, staying up late. And when I was in that dining room, I was listening to music, and I don't know what I was doing. I was putting something together, like a project. I think I was doing like a family photo thing with music on it and stuff. Um, and I felt something crawling on the back of my neck. And I don't know if I ever told you this. And I was just like, when something's crawling on your back of your neck, what do? You always like brush it with your hand. And I was thinking it was a bug or something, but it wasn't. So then I thought about everything that has been going on in this house. So I immediately started taking pictures, like selfies. And of course, I didn't catch anything, but that felt weird because it felt like fingers. It felt like fingers were like doing like a crawl finger on the back of my neck, but it was no bug. So I don't know how to explain that, but yeah, I don't know.
Was that the only time that happened?
That was the one time that I felt touched. I think. Yeah, I can't remember of any other times, but that was a time that I felt like I was touched at that time. And it was kind of weird. And um, there was another incident uh, in the living room. I think I told you about that. When I was laying down at the time, we had Freedom and Flower, our two dogs, and I was sleeping on the couch, and I heard Freedom growling, like like deep growl, and I was like, "What?" And it woke me up. And at that time, I woke up and I stood up, and then I could hear footsteps because in the living room there was wooded floors, so I would hear footsteps walking towards me, and I had gotten up. I stood up, and the thought came to my mind was like, okay, you have the guts to walk up to me, and I was like telling him, show yourself, tell me, show me who you are, and nothing ever happened after that. After I said to show me, so that was one thing that was pretty cool to hear footsteps.
Well, and that was one room that had the wood floors. I believe
Exactly.
yours was tile right there, like white.
Right.
Like,
You're right. The
so the
kitchen.
fact that it must have been right on you
Yeah,
to have heard that.
that's true. Yeah, you're right. Because the kitchen had tile, the breakfast room had tile, living room. I mean, the dining room had carpet.
Okay, I thought so.
Yeah, and then the rest of course, the upstairs was all carpet. That's where all the bedrooms were.
Huge windows
Yeah,
everywhere.
huge. Yeah. Is there anything else that you can think of that maybe kind of like not like spooked you, but just kind of made you feel like, that's like a vibe we had, other than the shadow you saw and the uneasiness in your house? I mean, your room.
Not necessarily my room, but it was more the times that I went and played with Bella in her room.
Yeah.
I would say that was another room that I felt it was really just that back side of the house. It just felt heavy. You walk in and it's like a blanket of just like heaviness. You don't know why. And, you're kind of looking over your shoulder the whole time you're in the room. But
Right.
it's something that I think I just got used to. And at that time, I got my permit. I was in the beginning stages of wanting to hang out with my friends and be
Oh
out of the house.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it was almost like I avoided a lot of it. But when I was there, I mean, you didn't really feel alone in those rooms
Yeah.
ever. And the times that I had to be there getting out of school and, I just kind of, I'd go to my room, I'd turn something loud on, and then that would be it.
Yeah.
And like you said, I think before that you would almost hear people talking, and I'd already been home.
Right. Yeah. Exactly what you just said about being uneasy in the bedroom. I would come home after work, and I would always go to your room and, of course, knock on the door. You say you're fine, so that I'd go back because your mom would pick up Bella. So I'd come, I'd be the first one home, and I'd go to the bedroom, my bedroom, and then I would just lay down, watch TV, or I would just take a nap. And usually, when I did take a nap, I didn't have the TV on, but I would hear almost like static radio, almost like people having a conversation. And I couldn't make out what they were saying or anything, but I always looked out the windows, always to see if anybody was in our backyard. And then I would always check our neighbor, through the window, backyard, see if they're out there. I would see nothing. And then there was a church behind us. Of course, there was nothing going on over there. So I don't know what, hearing those whispers of a conversation happening. And that was like every time I'd go home. I thought that was just weird. I don't know how to explain it, but having conversations. But
Well, and something people don't talk about, especially if your house is one that is being talked about,
yeah,
is that almost everyone knows, but you don't.
true.
You're there, and how long have people wanted? At the time, my friends wanted to mention something or ask me questions, or
Right.
it was just not something that oh, she's in that house now,
Mm-hmm.
But definitely the only time I have ever experienced those things at a home. Any other experiences have been just, not where I live,
Mm-hmm.
thankfully. But, that place, if anything, it pretty much, it struck a chord with me. Like I said, keeping closets closed
Right.
at all times. It's just, someone is at the front. It's such a beautiful house, and it probably still is. I've always, thought about driving past to see if someone lives there, if they are still renting it out the way they
Right.
have been, if it's still this revolving door, but it was beautiful, honestly. I mean, you couldn't tell. There wasn't anything eerie to me from the outside at all.
Yeah.
And honestly, being there, if you're visiting, is probably fine. But
Right.
if you're staying there and it's dark, I feel like that's when things happen more.
I think, like I said earlier, your bedroom and the guest bedroom were the two bedrooms, or two rooms that I felt like something was off. I'm not saying anything was demonic or evil or anything, but you just felt like when you walked in these rooms, you just felt like something was off. Like when I go to locations of haunted locations and I go into a room or something, I just feel like if I'm not feeling anything demonic or anything evil or anything that is going to hurt me, I feel like they're just curious. They know that you're there and you feel like they know that, I just feel the presence of them, but it's just mainly they're just curious. They're nothing, they're not going to harm you and stuff. And I think that's how that house was, but it was very active. I mean, I remember the where the living room was, we had a really nice fireplace, blah blah blah, and then in the breakfast room you would go down the hall and then you would have the bathroom, and then the back door or the back room was the laundromat. And at times at night I would hear that door open, and I would get up and I closed that door, I know I closed that door, and then it would be open, so I'd close it back up, and then even the next day in the morning, I'd wake up in the morning and then I go to the restroom and the door's open again. And I was like, okay, now you're playing games with us. But I remember, I mean, our we had two dogs, and both dogs didn't seem rattled except for that one time that Freedom and I heard the footsteps. But unfortunately, your first dog, Flower, was one that passed away while we were living in that house. That was kind of heartbreaking.
That was hard.
Yeah, she was old, but she had diabetes and she had cancer, and so unfortunately we had to put her down. And I think you may not remember this or not, but I think upstairs we had like a mini theater room with theater chairs, and I heard shuffling next to the closet where we had all our video, or I mean not video, but our game boards and all our games and all that for you girls. And I had taken a picture. And when I took a picture, there was a silhouette of Flower just sitting there by the door, which was kind of weird. And that was, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the next night or the same night that she was put to rest. But it was kind of like one of those, like, I'm here and watching you guys. Like it felt good to see that.
Yeah.
But I know that was your first real, not first real dog, but your first dog that you had for so many years.
I stayed home from school. I remember I
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
I can't get out of bed. That was my first experience losing someone that I loved. That was my
Yeah.
very first time.
That was,
And it was a dog, but
yeah, it was me and you that went and took her down to the vet.
I was in the very back of the car
yeah,
with her.
because your mom stayed home with Bella. So the other thing I don't know if I ever told you is that when one of the nights, because with all these things that were happening in the house, I just got very curious because I was always intrigued with the paranormal growing up since I was a kid, and all this stuff that was happening, I kept hearing things. So I'd always have like my phone with me, and it was I don't know iPhone 4, iPhone 3, I don't know what I had, but it was like the back in the day, and I took pictures, and I took pictures at the stairs. You know how the stairs went up straight to the top to the and there was a silhouette of a man. I think I've ever told you that, but it was a silhouette of a man that was wearing a fedora hat or whatever we call those. I don't know what you call them, but it's it was almost like it was in the '60s, like a suit with a hat, and you can make out what it from the picture.
Wow.
And I thought that was kind of like that was I was like weird, like really, So that was something that I caught, I guess, through the picture. But of course, at the time, I was married to your mom, and I don't know if your mom had any other experiences besides the shadows in the mirror. Did she ever tell you anything?
She never told me anything, but even to this day, if that house ever gets brought up, she talks about like how we just all had our own experiences there.
Yeah.
So it's something that she still thinks about.
Right.
And to this day, that's the only place I've ever experienced things like that at.
Yeah.
Yeah, like living there. But it, like I said, it struck a chord for sure.
Yeah. The other thing that it may not, it's not paranormal, but the one thing that I remember about that house is that one time your mom called me and she's parked in the driveway and she tells me you need to come outside because there's a huge black snake in the sidewalk by the front door. And I was like, okay, what do you want me to do? So I I go through the garage door, open the garage up, have a shovel, and I look at that black snake. It's a water moccasin, and the thing is huge. And when I open the garage door and I come out with my shovel, it automatically turned around and faced me and stood up like a cobra. And I was like, nope, nope. I closed the door very quick. I was like, I don't want that thing in the garage. That thing was huge, but it finally took off into the grass and then went somewhere else. So I'm not saying that's paranormal, but that's just the way the house was.
It was odd.
Yeah, it was odd. I mean, we had good times there, but at the same time, it was just like things that just happened you couldn't explain. I remember we took a picture by the chimney. I still have that picture.
I was wearing a pink scarf.
Yeah, of us three. It was during Christmas. It was like I said, that house was really nice, but it had the spooks, and other than just the taps and the knocks and the footsteps and stuff, I don't think it was very, demonic or evil. So.
No, just uneasy. You felt uneasy because you knew something was around. You can't see it. Obviously, it sees you.
Yeah.
It's curious, like you said, and you want nothing to do with that.
Right.
It
was fun. But is there anything else you would like to add?
I mean, I wonder, had we lived there longer, what else we could say, or people that have lived there after us, what they could say.
Yeah.
I've wondered about that. Maybe Flower stayed there, Like,
Yeah,
I've always
that's
thought
true.
that in the back of my mind.
That's true.
But
So there's one question I'd have to ask you. Would you ever go investigate with
that
us?
house,
No. Investigate with us, like an actual real haunted location. Or do you feel like you have too strong ties to have something attached to you?
I would have to know enough background
Right.
to be comfortable for sure. I am the first one to say I'm 100% a chicken
Mm.
when it comes to these things, mainly because I've been followed
Hmm.
before, and
Yeah.
I've been almost, how do you say it? Like, I've talked with someone that almost just warned me about it, that I
Hmm.
have that, I guess, spiritual, I put it out there in some
Like,
way, shape, or form, that
kind
it
of
like
like,
manifests
yeah,
somehow.
almost like you have an open mind, but you're not really knowing that you have an open mind.
I mean, I can walk into a room and I can tell you right away that something's off.
Right.
There have been times, even in a home that I was with mom at several years later. I mean, I walked in and I just felt so uneasy, and she'd spent all night crying, because
Right.
she had a dream that her her grandmother passed away, and she sure enough did, like that following week.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of how, I guess, it is for us in the family. But I've had moments where I felt like I wasn't chicken, and I've gone and just walked in a graveyard,
Mm.
came to the house, and
Right.
had spooky things happen. I've had you come to the house before. I've had to call you to see if you could come over, just to give me some company, tire me out to where I could go to sleep.
I remember that.
And then, mom had seen what I was seeing, and she didn't believe me at first. Like the TV changing channels in front of you, the remote is nowhere near you.
Right.
Scuffles under the bed, things like that. And it's all like curious and harmless, like you said. So it would just have to be something innocent, I would say.
Yeah.
Not the hard stuff. I'm not there. I'm not there. But, and it's hard to get rid of, honestly.
Hmm.
It's really hard for me to become detached from it.
Yeah.
It likes to hang out for a little bit.
Right. I think that you and Bella have strong. I don't know how to explain it, but you guys are strong in that paranormal field because since you and her, I've always had something around me always happen. Like I don't know when we used to live in Imperial Oaks, things would happen, and then when Bella was born, it just amped up. I don't know if I ever told you that. In our bedroom, we had a TV, and in the middle of the night, the TV would turn on. The remote wasn't even near me; it was on the dresser drawer or whatever, and I was like, "Why is the TV on?" Of course, your mom never liked me to have the TV on at night because she's like, light keeps her up. So I would always wonder why the TV would turn on. And then I would have a lot of nightmares about that hallway. You know how where your bedroom was, the hallway? It was your bedroom to the left, and right to the right was the bathroom, and then Bella's bedroom was in the back. Do you remember that? I would have dreams that I would be fighting evil, trying to save you guys at that house. And this was at the time that, Bella was young, but she was crawling, but she was still young.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe someday, maybe someday the grandkids will be paranormal. I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, Kyle even told me. I mean, my husband. He was very close to his grandma.
Right.
And when our daughter was born, she's going to be 1 in a month. She would smile a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and like to nothing. And
Right.
she started smiling, and he's like, "That's my grandma." Yeah.
Wow. That's just strange. Well, I got one last question before we wrap this up. I just say one thing, like, what do you think about, or how do you feel about your dad being a ghost hunter?
I feel like you were always supposed to do this. You've always been strong for these kinds of things, especially when it's food. Like, it scared all of us. You've always been the, show yourself and,
Yeah.
the protector. You've been curious about it too.
Yeah, I know.
So I would say I think this is your calling, and keep doing it.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. Well, that's going to wrap up this podcast. And as always, I just want to say, stay spooky, fellow misfits.